So in this video, we're going to give you a very quick and simple definition of blended coursework in its purest form. If you've watched our videos on simulcasting or blended with an online pathway or blended with rotating cohorts, you'll know that those models are a little bit more complex versions of the original simple blended course modality. We have not offered many blended courses at Wake Forest, so it's understandable that we don't know a lot about that. Many people are talking about blended to mean a variety of things these days, so we want to first start and make sure you understand the basic model, and it really is quite simple. So if you watched my presentation on contact hours, you'll know that in a traditional 3-credit-hour course, we expect about 135 hours of work of students. Traditionally, that was divided between in-person and out-of-class work, where about 90 hours was out of class and about 45 hours were in class. As we've moved online or gained new technology and new ways of teaching, that language no longer makes a lot of sense. And so the way that we typically talk about this now is that in a typical course, we expect about 90 hours of independent work of our students and about 45 hours of engaged work of our students. This engaged work, however, doesn't have to happen in the classroom. We can have in-person engagement for sure, but we can also have online engagement as well. And both of these kinds of engagement are distinguished from independent work that could happen online or on the couch or some other place, right? So engagement is the key, and it can happen online or in person. And that's what makes the crux of the difference between different modalities that are in person, online, or blended. So in a typical week, the way this would work is that students would be expected to spend around 9 hours on their course. 3 of those hours should be engaged with the instructor or engaged with fellow students, and 6 of those hours should be spent studying, doing problem sets, working independently on their own. In an in-person class, this is pretty standard. Those 3 engagement hours take place in person, and that's why you have in a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, you have 3 course sessions that meet for an hour each, and that's the 3 hours that are made up, and then the 6 hours are spent on homework, so pretty straightforward. In an online course, instead of having those 3 hours of class sessions, those engaged hours go online. Now, you could have students do all 9 hours a week independent work online, but that's the kind of online teaching that we don't like. So what's important is that we continue to have 3 hours a week of engagement with our students in our online courses, but just via the online modality. Now, this doesn't have to be synchronous, as I said in my previous video. Online engagement does not have to be live and at the same time. A discussion board also counts. Basically, the idea is that students need to be engaged in activities where they can get feedback and response from people who will respond. So watching a video doesn't count as engagement, but engaging in a discussion board does. So now that we know what in-person and online is, pretty straightforward, I'm sure you can guess what blended is. All that blended is a course that mixes up the in-person and online engagement activities. So in a typical week, there's still 3 hours of engagement required of students in a typical week, but instead of all 3 being online or all 3 being in person, in this scenario, 1 of those hours is in person and 2 of those hours are online. Now, if you look out over the whole semester, you could even have, say, only 3 hours in person over the whole semester and 42 hours of engagement online. You have a lot of flexibility, and any mixture of these things is what counts as blended. And note here that the mixture is related to the hours, and so some hours are online and some hours are in person, rather than a mixture of some of our students being online and some of our students being in person, which is what blended synchronous or simulcasting does. So all that we mean when we say blended is that some of the course hours are in person and some of the course hours are online. Unfortunately, just adopting a traditional blended approach where all of our students come for a face-to-face meeting and then all of our students do their engagement online would not be enough to solve our space problems. It would also not be enough to accommodate the students who are off campus because they wouldn't be able to be in person for those in-person sessions. So that's why we had to come up with the blended with rotating cohorts modality and the blended with an online pathway modalities. But we are going to say a bit more about those moving forward, but it's important that you understand the simple model of blended is that there's some combination of in-person engagement hours and online engagement hours, in addition to the standard expectations for independent work on the part of our students.